Welcome back to the show. I am joined in this segment by my good buddy Doug Weaver. Doug, good to see you again.
And good to talk to you about what's going on this week.
Well, got a lot going on. Our national championship, the U.S. Open.
Right.
Doug is a two-time participant in this event. You played in, what?
89 and 93.
89, 93. So you understand what the pressure cooker of an Open is all about.
Well, you get excited, and Lee Jansen was doing a review of his win at the Olympic Club, and he said, I get too excited sometimes, you know, and so you had to, the excitement just makes it like no other tournament.
Yeah, I always wondered, you can't miss fairways there and win. You can't get a little adrenaline surge on putts because they're just too fast. It's hard to do those things when you're playing a $5 Nassau with your buddies, to keep those things out of the swing. I can't imagine with all the anticipation and the excitement of an Open, how do you get your body? Those best players just seem to have an ability to channel all that energy down and use it effectively out there, don't they?
Well, you get used to it by playing in competition regularly, but then, like we just mentioned, then it's heightened in the Super Bowl, it's heightened in a playoff, it's heightened in your rivalry, and now it's the U.S. Open. I remember my hands felt like they were swollen up. I felt like they were gloves. I didn't feel like they were just hands, but they weren't swollen up. But it was just the adrenaline, the blood was flowing, and there was Baltusrol. There was a creek that ran out there 315 yards, and my caddy Michelle Dion, who lives here, said we had already planned it. Well, don't hit driver here because you'll hit it. You could hit it in this creek. Well, I had so much adrenaline, my 3-wood went 312 yards.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's just to say about how these guys are thinking about this tournament. It's something that they had to fight to get there. Most of them had to do 2 rounds of qualifying, or 2 days of qualifying, win the state, win the section. Then they had to, the PGA Tour players had to go into a qualifying, other than the ones that qualified through whether they won their national Open or their, whatever contingencies that got them out there. So everybody worked hard to get there. They're fired up.
Yeah, unless you're in the top 50 in the world, it's a grueling process just to be in the Open.
Right.
And the top 50 in the world, their games are pretty on cue, so they go in there fairly tuned up. But the Open, again, the way the USGA sets these courses up, it's just, I have more fun. I love the Masters because of all the history, the beauty, but I really have more fun watching this tournament more than any other tournament, because you do see the best players in the world fighting every shot just to keep from having that disaster that ruins their tournament chances.
But just imagine what makes the difference in a U.S. Open fairway and a U.S. Open or non-U.S. Open fairway is, say, 20 to 30 yards. Like, you stand out here at any golf course on Hilton Head, and the fairway is typically 50 to 60 yards wide.
Yeah.
The rough is light. Now you've got a fairway that's 25 to 35 yards wide.
Right.
And then the rough is what? It's
yeah.
high.
I mean, literally, Doug. I mean, it's almost like it's close to hitting in a hazard when you hit in U.S. Open rough, isn't it?
Right.
A lot of these guys are going to have to wedge out and take their chances with the short game. Olympic Club. Last time it was played there was in '98. I think most people probably remember that tournament for Payne Stewart losing it there on the 17th hole. His drive was perfect, but landed in a divot. He wasn't able to get that in for par, and Jansen wound up backing into that victory. Payne did go on and win the next year in '99 before his tragic death later that year. So Olympic, you had brought in this earlier to talk a little bit about this golf course and what's so unique about it.
Well, it's on the side of a hill. It's sloping down to the Pacific. It's wind. They've cut down a lot of trees that have normally blocked the wind. These big pine and cypress trees now the wind is a major factor. You have the cold, damp air of the Pacific North. You've got most of the holes are going to cross the hill, and you're playing a dog leg with the slope that oftentimes goes the opposite way. For instance, a dog leg left, you would love to get up there and hit a draw.
Right.
But the fairway's going what?
Oh, it's going down to the right.
To the right. So you've got to be a real shot maker. I liken it unto Harbor Town on the side of the hill.
Imagine Harbortown on the side of a hill, and that's what you get.
Right. So you're standing on number 9 at Harbortown. You've got these big trees up there that you've got a 20-yard gap between, and you take your 5-iron and hit. You know, hopefully now you can get your 9 or 8-iron through that gap. Well, take that same scenario, but you're on a slope like this. The ball's below your feet. You know, and you've got to play for the ball to shoot way right or naturally fade right.
Well, I was going to say, we had talked about it before we came on. You know, what is the tendency of a ball flight when the ball is below your feet? And that's going to be pretty much par for the course, no pun intended, out there, isn't it?
Right.
A lot of uneven lies, and these guys got to factor in for that differential.
Right. When you go, the first hole is downhill, second hole straight uphill, third hole straight downhill.
Wow.
And then they start going across the hill. So yeah, uneven lies, strong legs, endurance. It's going to be TV can't really capture what they're doing.
Right. Well, and I always heard that about Augusta. You can't really get an idea of this elevation drop and change until you're out there. High def helps a little bit. Talking about the first few holes. Tiger Woods, I had heard in an interview earlier this week, said it's the toughest first 6 holes in championship history of any kind.
Wow.
And I see right here on the iPad, we've got number 1, 520 yards. Number 2, par 4. Converted par 4 nonetheless. You've got a 247-yard par 3 in there. You've got another 5 and 6 are 498 and 489 respectively. So really, and I think what they're trying to say is if you can manage your way through those in a maybe even or even a couple over, you're going to be okay. But that's really where this thing's going to be won or lost for those guys at the top of the leaderboard.
Well, let's take the first hole. It's 520 yards. However, it's downhill, and what's different about a U.S. Open fairway again versus the day-to-day fairway is it's hard, it's firm, it's like a pool table. So that player is going to be landing the ball 20 yards short and let the momentum carry it down the hill. Or they're going to land it 10 yards short. They have a yardage of, okay, this is where the ball is going to land and this is where it's going to roll to.
I gotcha.
So the yardage is, the USGA just hasn't said, let's just make it long. But you have to play a different shot.
This course really, probably more than most Opens, calls for a little bit more strategy given its significant elevation change.
Yes.
Doug, let's talk real quick about players. Who clearly Tiger is on form again. He won just 2 weeks prior to the Masters, very much like this. So it's kind of hard to say. He did say, though, he got control of his compression and he's hitting the ball high with control, which going into Augusta he was not. I like Tiger, always like Tiger, just because he's done it 14 times for no other reason than that. Who else sticks in your mind? Rory had a good week last week. Dustin Johnson came in and won a tournament. Who's
well,
in your
I think
mind?
Rory and a Dustin have the momentum, plus they have the strength and the distance.
Yeah.
One of the things about that heavy rough is it takes big hands and arms.
Yeah.
When you're pulling the ball out of the rough, whether it's with a wedge or with a 5-iron or a hybrid, that club gets down in there and grabs onto it. But if you know how to put the ball back in your stance a little bit and hit the ball, hit down and through that grass and hit that ball, but it takes strength in your hands to do it.
These guys are so strong these days, aren't they?
Right.
So the rough, it's going to be a factor. But for those stronger guys, they definitely have an advantage.
I played in the '89 Open at Oak Hill Country Club in upstate New York, Rochester, and it was lush, it was green, it was wet, it was wonderful, and Tom Kite got in the rough several times and didn't get out. Here was one of the greatest players ever. Now he turned around and at Pebble Beach won the tournament because, again, it was a little drier, the rough wasn't such an issue. There they dried out the fairways, they dried out the greens, but the rough was lighter. So back to who to think of players, I think Rory and Dustin have momentum, they have strength, they have distance.
Yeah, all going to factor in.
But at the same time, when we think about the history of the game, whether it was Arnold Palmer had the lead on Sunday and Billy Casper came back and beat him, and Billy Casper, then Hogan was beat by Jack Fleck on the last day. So it's just going to be a pressure cooker coming down to the last day. Who can just stay near there?
Yeah, yeah. When I look at the end of the day, we're out of time, but at the end of the day, it really is about who can manage their emotions and their energy the best coming down that stretch.
Right.
Well, it's going to be really exciting. The NBC always does a great job in covering, and I'm going to be watching it really from beginning to end. I'm just obsessed with it. But and you know, I'm sitting here with a two-time U.S. Open guy who actually had a hole-in-one in '89, so he knows what they're feeling out there. Yeah. Doug, real pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we always love seeing you here.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have this week. Check out the U.S. Open, check out the summer golf camps with the JPGA, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.